Welcome to the 032 Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Carlo Villarica. This is the very first podcast, so what I wanted to do for the very first podcast is basically talk to my good friend, Kahlil Corazo. He was one of our co-hosts in the Third World Startup Podcast. I'll link to that in the show notes. But basically, we talked about, you might notice in the background that there's roosters crowing, maybe even some birds. My thoughts about releasing something is, you never have to get everything perfect. If I wanted to get everything perfect, I would book a recording studio, have an engineer. But no, it's just me, my laptop, and a microphone. The whole idea right now is to get this going. I'm going to commit to 6 episodes, and we'll see what happens. So I just want to get this going really fast. I don't want to be one of those people who keeps talking about a project that, just doesn't push through until years and years later. So this is a whole attempt to get going. In the Third World Startup Podcast, we talked about entrepreneurship, startups in the context of the Philippines. 032 Conversations is going to be a little different. We're going to be talking to the creative class. Now, I kind of define creatives in a sense that basically anybody creating something from nothing. So when you think of creatives, you kind of think of them as like musicians or artists, graphic designers, painters, that sort of thing, writers. But I also like to include like entrepreneurs, event organizers, because there's a lot of creativity that goes into doing those things as well. And, even podcasting, even this thing. So I'm hoping to get people and interview them and talk to them about what it is like to be in the creative class. What is it like to be doing that kind of work? So, yeah, I hope you continue listening. I hope you guys stay tuned. This is the very first episode. And in this episode, I talked to Kahlil, and we talk about the different topics that I would like to touch on for this podcast. So think of it as a meta episode. We're basically talking about something that hasn't happened yet, that is going to happen. I have it in my head. In fact, we talk about how I came up with the name, or the different steps of putting up a podcast, and even how I would talk to certain people in the community. So I hope you guys like that. I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you guys subscribe. You can subscribe to us in iTunes, or your favorite podcast app. And then, enjoy. Stay tuned. Here's my conversation with Kahlil Corazo.
What we're talking about here now?
No. So this one. Okay.
It's meta.
Yeah, I want to be meta. So this is going to be the first. I picture this to be the first podcast that we will release under the new 032 podcast, right? Which we'll talk about later, the name and everything. But so I want us to, for this first one, I want to have a sounding board of sorts. So I want you to ask me questions about the podcast and what I've been doing to prepare for it.
Yeah, I was thinking about it as well. It's because I've been looking forward to this actually.
Any
podcast in Cebu. Yeah. So it's something I'm surely will listen to it. It's it's going to be one of the podcasts that I will listen to regularly.
Oh, well, I hope so. We'll see if it's worth listening to. I hope so. 1 second. I just want to move this. We're going to hear that. Okay. So I'd like this first podcast to be the meta podcast. We'll talk about how, the why, the what. Yeah.
So I'll ask you about, I should be asking you, no?
Yeah. But I understand that I also didn't feed you any questions or anything. So I have some questions here.
No, but as a listener, I have questions as a listener.
Exactly,
so,
there.
Yeah.
So there's some stuff that I haven't thought about.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, do you have a question straight off the bat?
Yeah, I was like, what's your plan for this? Like, what's the scope of this thing?
Okay, the scope of this podcast.
Yep.
All right. So first of all, I've been a long time listener of podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really enjoy listening to podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever I get into something, I get into it like, I really get into it. Like, I don't half-ass stuff. So I've been not wanting to do it for a long time because I knew the amount of energy and effort required to do it well. Right? So, but as with things that are worth doing, I also felt like for the whole 2017, I wanted to start a podcast. It's been in the back of my head. It's something that I was always thinking about in my free time. So I decided, if I've been thinking about it for like a year, I gotta do it.
What finally convinced you to make 2018 the year of the Zerothreetwo Podcast?
Yeah, which we'll talk about the name later. I don't really have the name yet as of this recording. But what finally convinced me, because as with anything, if you want to do something, if you want to add something to your life, you have to take away something, right? So when 2018 started, we had it was also the end of our construction period of these houses that I'm building. So there's a huge chunk of time that's freed up, right? So now I have the time to do it and I can insert it in. Because, if you just keep adding things to your life, eventually you're just going to be overwhelmed. Right? So finally I decided, and then, it was like a sign. I finished the construction. I'm going to get started doing this. Right? And then eventually, as time goes by, it will be easier to do. I hope.
Definitely.
I hope.
And I hope this will be your worst podcast because all the other podcasts will be better than this.
Well, I hope so too. Well, yeah, but I also want the reason to record this podcast, this specific one, the very first one, is to give the listener an idea of what they can expect in the future.
All right.
Right? So, like, first of all, what is this podcast for? Right? So I also wrote this down. So I have a whole new
your script.
Yeah. It's a script, but I haven't memorized it or anything. So I read this book, Perennial Seller, and then they're very specific as to how you can how you should describe something. So this podcast will take a deep, actionable look at people who are doing exceptional things for Cebuano creatives or entrepreneurs. This helps people learn more about what it takes to create something tangible. Now, there's a lot of fluffy words that I don't really want to be there, but generally that's the idea. I want to talk to people who are doing something
exceptional.
Yes.
In Cebu.
Yes, generally, yeah. Exceptional in Cebu. Yeah, is it unclear or?
Yeah, I'm just actually my questions. I've been thinking about it as well. What would I ask you? And what I'm interested in hearing these creatives of Cebu is how do they do their work?
Exactly. That's what I want to talk to them about. I want to get specific as to how
could my particular struggle is to be productive in creating something amidst all the you have your business, you have family stuff,
all the noise. Yeah, exactly. That's what I want to.
Yeah.
That's what I want to ask these creatives or entrepreneurs because and then a lot of it can go down to their routine. What is it like?
Exactly.
Because you can ask them what's your inspiration, etc., but it's very vague and it's not something that people can follow very quickly. So I want to get to the specifics of their process, and then also things like what it was like in the beginning, what struggles did they go to. I also think there's value in stories like that.
Definitely. How about another thing that I wanna hear from people is how, or particularly creatives, is how they solve the money problem.
Oh yeah, that one also. I want to ask them about that. It's so many people struggle with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you could the approaches I've seen is either you make some money with something else, and do your creative thing on the side.
Nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you find a way to make money from your creative thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know what's right for me, but it's going to be interesting to hear how people think about that.
Yeah, and then not just how they think, because the whole idea is to interview people who are actually doing something.
How they solve the thing.
Yeah, so like, I'm sure there's a lot of people doing really, really great work, but that's not their main source of income. Mm-hmm. And then I'm hoping that the people I interview will be open about it. No? So it's another thing if they want to talk about it or not. Right?
Will you be asking them like beforehand? Could I ask you about your the money thing?
Yeah, in fact, what I was one of my notes here is I want to come up with like a script of sorts of asking guests to come to the podcast. Right? So there's going to be a script. So part of it will be like, what can they expect? Like I have a list here. It's lost in all the junk that I have. But anyway, like questions to ask them, like, is there something they want to promote, or do they have an out? Like, how long can they sit down and talk? Because preferably, I would like something longer than like an hour and a half.
Tim Ferriss style.
Yeah. No, because not just Tim Ferriss. Like a lot of the podcasts that I like listening to, the interview podcasts anyway, they're long. You know, like the WTF by Marc Maron, Tim Ferriss for sure.
Longform.
Longform. Oh, I love Longform. Those, Longform's even short. That's like probably 45 minutes to an hour. So I want to try to have those long conversations recorded.
Yeah, and according to Tim Ferriss, the good stuff comes after the first hour, something like that. No?
Oh yeah, is it? Yeah.
I heard something like that.
Yeah, because it takes a while to get into the groove of things. Yeah. Because like even us, like we know each other. We've known each other for a while now, but like, you know, you put a microphone in front of us. We're talking differently. Where it's a little tense.
Yeah.
You can feel that. And then it's going to take a while for us to just ignore the microphones and just talk normally. Right? So yeah, that's something. So I'm going to have like a whole set of like
warm-up questions, huh?
Not really warm-up. Like, you know, like just an email. Probably, what do you call this? Like an email
template or something.
Yeah, template or checklist for them to like fill up. Not really fill up, but like they know what to expect coming in.
They think about it beforehand. So they're coming in, they have stories.
Yeah, not as probably even actually that like some question. I don't know if there's gonna be like like the Tim Ferriss style, which I don't really want to do. Is he has like a set of questions that he asks pretty much in every podcast.
Yeah,
I don't really want to do that.
We'll see. I remember one of his preparatory things is like he asks the guest beforehand if there's their go-to story and what would be the best question to surface that story.
Oh, because that's his trick to get the guest to relax. So he asks a question that he knows the guest has an answer to already, that the guest has answered 1,000,000 times. So that gets the guest to relax, and then he starts coming in with his his actionable type questions, that sort of thing. Right? So, admittedly, that's the art of it. You know, interviewing is an art in itself.
Yeah.
Which
it only get better the more you do it.
Yeah, I hope so. At this point, I don't really have that yet. So, so we'll keep going. So, I want to talk about this specific podcast is going to be a bit weird because it's about us talking about the podcast, and then you're not necessarily prepped to ask me anything.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, this is how we've been doing it as well. I mean, we've been doing this Third World Startup podcast last year.
Yeah.
It's a good practice, I suppose.
Yeah.
But we never sort of prepared for that, no?
Yeah, well, this one, there's a bit of preparation. So here, I'll show you, in fact, my checklist. So I have like a little checklist that I should do. So podcast steps. So number 1, read about the interviewee.
Mm-hmm.
Then write notes in Evernote and then determine what to focus on. Very rough outline. Then I'm also planning to just give them free 032 Merc. You're gonna get one. I'll give you a hat.
Nice.
Yeah. Right? And then things to bring during the interview: microphone, laptop, notebook, pen. I forgot to get my notebook and pen. And the 032 Merc. Right? And then record the podcast. After recording, you take a photo with the guest. Give the 032 Merc. Right? And then look for a trailer of the podcast. I'm not even sure what that means anymore. And then write the show notes, record intro, then stitch all the audio together. Right. So this is still very rough. I just wrote this down over the weekend, and then it'll evolve and everything.
There's another question, or there's another aspect of creativity that I'm hoping you would ask, like how they manage their own psychology. No, it's like because like there's a lot of I feel no.
What?
There's a lot of psychological barriers, or like your own mind is your worst enemy in getting things done, creative things done.
Yeah. How they manage? I'm just getting my notebook because I got reminded that I have to take notes. So how they manage their psychology? That's a good one. I'm gonna write that down.
You would ask that. Like, does it make sense to ask people? Well, how do you manage your own psychology?
No, but that's a question on the struggle of making art, right? The struggle of producing art, and then that's the same thing like with like the money aspect also, because like a lot of creatives or artists don't want to. They're discouraged from creating art because. They think that it's not an avenue to make money.
Yeah, and also it's not an avenue to gain status in society. Like for instance, you're expected to be, I don't know, your family expects you to be someone, or something like that. It's like in society expects you to do certain things to confer status on you or something like that, and I'm sure it influences people in how they choose what they do on a daily basis, no?
Oh yeah, for sure. But it's like as well, yeah. So there's so much value in, false value put into like how much money you have, what you can buy, the car you drive, that sort of thing. And then I guess the thinking is you can't get all that if you're an artist or if you're creative. But the thing is also, at this point, at least now, in 2018, a big part of being an entrepreneur is being a creative person, right? So I don't know. I hope to like explore those topics with podcast
exactly.
guests.
How do they think about that? I mean, are they... I'm sure some of them will be... playing the games, like both games, like do creative work at the same time, make some money, and I suppose another aspect, because I see this as well in artists, that it's like they don't want their art to be polluted by commercial intentions or something like that.
Okay.
So I just want to hear.
I have some thoughts about that, but like, yeah, I know what you're saying.
So I just want to hear how they think about that. That's interesting for me. It's like, because it's part of overcoming your own, because your bias as well, no? It's like, because that could be a barrier to actually doing what you want.
Yeah, I think the term there is they don't want to sell out.
Yes, yeah, selling out.
Yeah,
like what are your thoughts on selling out, or what are people's thoughts on selling out?
Yeah, which we will talk about in a future podcast. No, but I understand. Like, those are the things. So those are things that you would like to hear more about.
Yeah, definitely.
At least from the creative side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that would be very helpful in terms of the listener, and especially if you're somebody who's like, who hasn't started yet
exactly
doing these things.
And what's preventing you is like thinking of what might people think.
Yeah.
No?
That's interesting. What else do you think, like, so aside from like the struggle, the money aspect, the
routine, community as well.
How
does community help you? Because like, well, in one of the most helpful things I've gotten in the past couple of years was our mastermind, wherein we, it's like we just got together for entrepreneurs, and then we sort of like share our what we discovered, and also sort of commit ourselves to certain goals.
Yeah, just to step back, just to explain to the listener. So the mastermind was it was supposed to be a weekly, but it ended up becoming a monthly meeting with two other friends of ours who are also in the Third World Startup Podcast. And then we would talk about things that went on in our businesses. Just to...
Yeah. So the agenda was first the wins since last meeting, current challenges we're facing, our goals for the next, until the next meeting, and then...
we were just sharing something cool for the last thing.
Which is, I found very helpful in like pushing myself towards, or at least thinking about what's the most important thing I need to focus on right now, because I have to explain that, and then what should I be focusing on until the next meeting, and the sort of zooming out from your problems with people who have similar experiences, but not so into your own business or into your own work that they'd be limited in their thinking. So it's like
they're able to, because we're not involved in what you are currently doing.
Yep.
So it's easy for us to take like a step back and look.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely. And then the other aspect of community that's also important is like the like, let's say you are an artist, and then there is a community there that will support the artist or the creative or the entrepreneur. So not only amongst, because in a way you're talking about like peers.
Exactly.
Right? But there's also like a community of like people helping each other out, like even monetarily, like really like, it's similar to like when you have like a local coffee shop and you keep going there because you just want that coffee shop to stay open, things like that, like from a customer perspective.
Yeah.
So there's that also, like what about the relationship between seller and buyer?
Exactly. And how do you like, at least for the ones who have built a following, how do you actually do that? It's like,
how to build followings. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, they're like your patrons. If you're, I don't know, it's either, there's this, I guess, spectrum like between like customer to patron, if you're in the creative world. Like, how do they think about that?
Yeah, the customer is like maybe like somebody who just walks and sees you there, and then like, oh, okay, then you're a customer out of convenience. But a patron is somebody who is like, who will really support what you do. Yeah.
I suppose most of the time it's like a mixture of both.
For sure, it's a mixture.
I want to wear the shirt, but at the same time I want this person to continue making shirts or something like that. No?
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sure there's a big mixture of both. Like even me, even our business, we have like people who really support what we do, but we also the vast majority of the customers are people who really just, they're just there, they see it in a store and they're like, oh hey, and they buy something, which has its pros and cons as well. That's something that I would like to explore in the podcast too, right? Speaking of the podcast, it's weird to just keep calling it podcast because I actually don't really have a name for it yet.
Why don't you just call it 032? It's pretty good. I mean, you already built the brand. So.
Oh yeah, here I'll show you. Like, so here I wrote down a couple of names, possible names for the podcast. I have my personal favorites, but like these are just like I just vomited words out. Right? So like you have conversations, creative conversations, and then I just ended up going third world creative, which we're not going to use, right? Or 032 Conversations, The Meeting, The Hustle, You Bet, the 032 Podcast, the Carlo Villarica Show, the Tim Ferriss Podcast, Southside. No, but I personally am leaning towards 032 Conversations.
Yeah, because you don't want to build another brand from scratch.
That's true.
That's my opinion. And then maybe the addition would be a description so that people, this makes sense, huh? So
there should be like a subtitle. 032 Conversations.
No, conversation itself is totally okay, this must be some sort of conversation.
Oh yeah, it's a podcast. So it's
and then maybe the subtitle could be the more lengthy conversation.
I should come up with a good subtitle, like 032 Conversations.
Podcast about creatives in Cebu. I mean, you just make it more concise version of your description.
Yeah, well, because ideally, I was reading up. Ideally, well, not ideally, but it's a good strategy to have the name of your podcast be basically what your podcast is about. And you can see that in podcasts like Startup. It's about startups. Yeah. I'm struggling to find that. Long form. It's about long form, the writers.
Writing, yeah.
Yeah, so
Song
Exploder, which basically is about music. So yeah, but I'm leaning towards 032 Conversations because it's very you're right. We have our brand in there. And then it's really talking to people around Cebu generally. There's just I just don't see the creative or entrepreneurial aspect to it, but maybe I can add that in the subtitle. We'll see.
And also, I mean, it might morph into something else. It's still gonna be a conversation. We don't know what will happen with this podcast.
That's true. Yeah.
So at least it's gonna be a conversation. It's like
yeah, we can. Yeah, well, so that's what I'm leaning towards. 032 Conversations. Should it be 032 Conversations Podcast?
The thing is, I'm not sure if a lot of people here know what the podcast is.
Yeah, no. If in terms of audience, I'm not.
You're not thinking about that.
I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about I need this many. Which my phone's ringing. Yep,
it should be.
I forgot. I should include that in my checklist. To always mute my phone. I'm gonna mute my phone. Okay. So
there's a how about that? Don't cry. What's the story about that? Is that man?
Don't cry. I don't know why I put don't cry. I don't know why I put
just
don't
reading
cry.
through Carlos' list of possible titles.
Maybe
one here is don't cry.
Maybe my baby was there, and then my little boy was there, and then he just kept crying, and then I was like, don't cry. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, I'm not really thinking about audience right now. Because, for me, what's gonna make it successful will be, number one, is do I enjoy it? Mm-hmm. And then number two is, will I be able to forge? Because, if I'm talking to people, if I'm interviewing people, that means that I am, connecting with another human being.
Yeah.
And then the nice thing with that is that, especially now, the older I get, I realize it's easier to stay siloed into whatever I'm doing and then just stick to it. And then I don't have to meet new people.
Yeah.
So it's a nice excuse to reach out
to interesting people.
Right. Exactly. So I feel like that's going to be worth it in itself.
Yeah.
Right. And then if people listen, then that's a plus. Right. So, but also knowing that I only committed to do 6 episodes first, and then we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. If it's too time consuming, if it's something that I'll dread doing, if I find out that I'm not good at it at all, then I'll just stop. But I'll commit to 6. Right.
Yeah. I hope more people. In Cebu, would do this. It's the thing is, I hope more people also listen. Because it will sort of sustain this this product, this output, this creative output?
Yeah, well, I feel, well, if the traffic is any indication, then maybe more people will start listening to podcasts. It's really, it's nice to do something while stuck in traffic. In fact, that's why I started listening to podcasts.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Because I realized that I was getting bored with radio, and I kept listening to the same things over and over and over, and then I wasn't exploring new music anymore. And I just decided, I want to try listening to this podcast thing, and then I got really into it. That's why I started.
I've been trying to convince people that, you're in traffic, and this is a great way to spend that time, learn new things, get entertained. But, I don't think I've convinced a lot of people to do that.
Well, I don't know.
I'm hoping it will, a lot of people. Also, it's like, another thing I realized, if I only talk to you about, earlier about how you would do a podcast, or maybe, because like, I've been telling you, like, I'm planning to do this other podcast soon about Cebu history and culture.
Yeah.
And my initial plan didn't really work because I was like looking at a particular artist, interviewing him. Your plan seems to be makes more sense, which is to approach other people, and I'm sure some of them will be okay with that. No?
Oh yeah, I'm sure people will say no, and some people will say yes. But to be fair, I'm starting out with like people that I know. These are
exactly.
These are people who I respect and admire, and I would like to learn more about. Because you don't usually have this craft conversation when you see them. When you see somebody, hey, how are you? Musta? What did you guys do? How was your trip? I saw that trip. But you don't really get to ask them how did they get to where they are? Are they struggling with anything?
Yeah, that's why it's also this arrangement is also nice because like you get to ask things you normally wouldn't ask.
Yes, exactly.
How did you solve the money problem, man?
Well, yeah. I mean,
maybe after a few bottles of beer, you could ask that, no?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure yet if we're gonna do this podcast. If we're gonna interview over alcohol, because that can go down the rails really quickly. No, but yeah, and then and also, knowing that other people struggle, if they do struggle, because sometimes it really is. I don't feel like people ever feel like they've made it. You get what I'm saying? Like, no one ever feels like, all right, I've achieved this peak, and then, that's it. Like, I think that happens to very few people. And it's more that I think it feels more like it's a climb that never ends, Yeah. And then, so I think it's important to share those stories also to people who want to do something. I feel like that my focus will be to people who want to. Maybe that's who my audience is. Well, at least that's who it is in my head. Like people who want to do something.
There's a lot of people.
Oh yeah, that's true. And then also we were thinking initially you might think this might be just like a purely Cebuano podcast, but in reality we're talking about creativity. We're talking about entrepreneurship. We're talking about learning. So hopefully the audience is, the potential audience is bigger than that.
Yeah.
Right? So, I don't know.
How do you reach out to your audience about this?
Very, maybe I'll mention it in a newsletter. I'll put it in a blog post. But nothing really like, hey, I'm doing a podcast. But why?
No, because they might have their inputs.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I feel I will. Well, like what kind of questions should I be asking them?
I don't know. Maybe what podcasts do you listen to?
Yeah. Some people have given me feedback about podcasts. Actually, I can't remember right now, but I'm sure I've gotten like an email or two about people ask me like, oh, I listen to podcasts too. I really like then they'll say a podcast. Usually it's usually like one of the really popular podcasts, like This American. Which one was it? Like the This American, Serial. Yeah, especially when Serial was like really popular. That one, a lot of people. There's some people a lot of people listen to Serial. I received some, maybe one or two.
Yeah, I feel like a video podcast would have more viewers than an audio podcast would have listeners, at least in the Philippines.
Maybe, but I don't know. The problem with video, so like you put a microphone in front of somebody, especially somebody who's not used to being interviewed or taken a video of, then they tense up. So it'll be even worse when you have like a camera pointed to the person. And then also at the same time, I'm just not interested in producing video. Part of it also is, part of the reason to do a podcast for me is because I like doing podcasts. And then I feel like it will mesh well with what I'm already doing. And then video, I just don't have the interest to do that. So I'm sure, if I hired somebody to edit the video or put a camera there, worried about another piece of equipment, then maybe. But I just don't really have the interest to do that. In fact, I'm not sure. I don't know. Did you try putting the Third World Podcast stuff on YouTube?
In Facebook.
Facebook?
Yeah.
And then did it get, I don't know, were you able to compare?
No, it's like, because it was just like a audio plus like a, the title. It was like this, the video was just the title.
Yeah, that's right.
A black background with like the white text.
So you couldn't really, it wasn't
It wasn't really a video. It was just...
Well, but I have seen podcasts posted on YouTube, and it's really just the thumbnail of the episode. So
I've seen as well, like local podcast, at least a local podcaster, and
who is this?
About fashion.
Oh, Issa, please. Yeah. Oh, she's nice. Yeah.
I think that's...
Actually, her YouTube, her Facebook videos would get thousands of views.
Exactly. So I'm thinking, and also like maybe apples to apples with what we were doing. There was this video posted on YouTube talking about the same thing, tech entrepreneurship, and it was like getting thousands of views as well.
Yeah, the thing with Facebook, it's especially the video on Facebook, it seems easier than YouTube to get thousands of views. No, I think it's because of the interface. People scroll and then they see, and then also I don't know what Facebook does when like if somebody sees like a second of it, is it counted as a view?
Most probably.
Yeah, so I don't know, right? And which really does not count. You want to see somebody who's been in it for like a few minutes, at least.
I think also like a podcast. Listening to a podcast, it seems as a more intimate or a deeper connection.
Oh yeah.
No, because like at least because like watching a video, usually you're watching it with your laptop or with your phone. You're doing so many other things. No? Well, at least for me, when I'm listening, I'm either traveling or like I'm fixing my bed. So it's like you're in, it's like the only other thing you're doing.
Well, I actually think that podcasts, the nice thing about podcasts is that you can do other things while listening. Because in a way, at least in my experience, I don't find that videos it's hard to do other things while watching a video.
Definitely. Yeah.
Right? So like, I find myself watching videos when I'm eating, when I'm eating, honestly. It's because if you watch a video, you kind of have to like really focus on it. Right? But I do understand, but on the other hand, like when you have a podcast, you can drive and still listen. Yeah. But I do find that, and then radio personalities also have the same effect where you have a more intimate relationship with them. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, it's like, because it's just like, I heard it somewhere. It's like because they're inside you. The voice, so? it's like you're listening to it. There's no external, what you call this, manifestation of that conversation. Mm-hmm. It's like it's in your head. I don't know. I heard it somewhere.
So is that maybe yeah? But I do notice that I feel like I know the people who I listen to on the podcasts.
Yeah.
So maybe this will, to the few listeners.
Maybe it's gonna be like a deep rather than a wide conversation or something like that. Deep with a few versus like a video, which is like some people will watch for a few seconds and that's it.
Which, to be honest, which is nice also. I like having a deeper connection is better than having a wider one.
Yeah.
So, when we started, like the Third World Startup, did you look at any like resources to learn more about podcasts?
Yeah, man, I spent a day like just figuring the whole thing out, especially the technical side, choosing where to host it, and all those options.
Yeah. So, yeah, because I'm gonna follow what you did. Like I'm just gonna use Libsyn. Libsyn. Yeah.
Yep.
I think there's like a $15,
$5 account.
The $5 I think is too little for me because I want to do it like once every 2 weeks or once every week. And then considering that my podcasts are like right now we are running like 30 something minutes, and I want it to go long, So probably I think the next one's $15.
I think, yeah.
And then so you looked at any specific resources that you looked at?
No, I just searched in Google like how to do a podcast, setup, things like that. So it's like you just spend a day searching.
Yeah. Well,
that's basically it. Use Libsyn and then post it in. You need that to host, and then for distribution, you have iTunes, Stitcher, and there's a recent one.
So wait, Libsyn automatically goes to Stitcher. Automatically,
you have to You have to register it.
Okay.
In iTunes and Stitcher.
Okay.
But you have to have Libsyn is like where the files are stored, while these other ones are distribution channels.
Okay.
This is where people.
So you just register once, and then every time you post, it'll just automatically come out.
Yeah, but I think with podcasts, I hope there's an easier way for like new listeners to. You could also post it in your newsletter.
Oh yeah.
And they could
embed it.
Just embed it, and then people play it and then listen to it from your website or your newsletter.
Well, what I plan to do is I'm gonna post it as a blog post, and then when I have like 2 or 3, then I'm gonna figure out a way to redesign the site and just add the word podcast somewhere, so they click on it and all the podcasts come out, and then but it's a way for people to find the podcast. But like me as a podcast listener, I actually hardly ever visit the website to listen. It's always through the app, which the name of the app that I use is called Pocket Casts, right? And it just automatically downloads it. Do you use Pocket Casts also?
No, I use I was thinking what am I using? I've been using it for years. I forget the name. It's like I don't remember.
You can tell me later, and then I'll put it in the show notes.
I just search for. For those if you're using an iPhone, there's a native
iTunes
podcast. In the iPhone, it's called Podcasts.
Really? Yeah. Okay, I don't have it.
And you just use that to subscribe to podcasts.
So that's the one that you use.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were Android.
I don't know. Sorry.
For
people who are using the iPhone. Me, I'm using BeyondPod. That's it.
BeyondPod.
Yeah.
BeyondPod.
Yeah, that's what came out when I searched for podcasting software, and then.
Did you pay for that?
Yeah, they had a discount for Christmas and paid for $2.
Yeah. So the Pocket Cast, same deal, a few dollars.
Yeah,
like the best few dollars I've spent on my phone ever.
It's like an upgrade for you to download more than one a day. But if you're starting out, you don't download really more than one a day. Nah.
I don't know. When I first got into podcast automatic, just subscribe to a bunch. Yeah. Well, a few resources that I found really really helpful, like the general what you need to do, the steps. It was in lifehacker.com, and how to start your own podcast. I'll show the links. And then the other one that was really interesting was Rolf Potts' interview of Tim Ferriss, and then how to start a podcast.
So Rolf Potts also has a podcast?
Yeah, in fact, his interview with Tim Ferriss is episode 1.
Okay, this is the podcast of Rolf Potts.
Yeah, Rolf Potts, which I'll link in the show notes, has a podcast, and episode 1 is asking Tim Ferriss about how to podcast. And then they go into, it's not just about like, all right, you sign up here, you do this. It's like the art of the interview a little bit.
Mm.
And then they talk about monetization, like the steps that Tim Ferriss does when he gets the guest, like his little rules, like he never asks the guests to promote the podcast, because that's his job.
Yeah.
And then he just really focuses on trying to get a really good product out.
Yeah. Hey, I have an idea. Why don't I ask you about like using the questions that we just talked about, so that you'd also share your own creative journey and your own creative
we should process. Do that. We can do that. In another... I want to stay on point on the podcast. No, but we can do that. We can do that in in a future podcast. Yeah, we should.
Because you probably won't never talk about that unless someone asks you. No?
That's true. Yeah, I won't unless somebody asks me. Yeah, we can do that. We can do we can do one. We can have like a whole bunch of this is how I want to do it. We can have a whole bunch of interviews down. So we can see kind of like where the podcast is going, because the first one's going to be different from the second, the third's going to be different from the second. And then but eventually it's going to morph into something that's more consistent. And then so at that point we could come in, and then I'm sure I'll have these questions that I unknowingly ask over and over again. So then we can come in.
Ask yourself.
Well, you can do it for me if you want. Yeah, let's do that.
How about like I'm curious about your experience in another medium, which is blogging.
Yeah.
Do you think it will be similar to that? Like, what was your experience in blogging? Like, was it
how we started?
Yeah, like was it you at the beginning? Was it like this? You committed to 6, and then
I know in the beginning there was no rhyme or reason. Like we just said, let's make a blog about Cebu, me and my friends, and then we just started blogging, and we wrote about like some of our first few blogs. I did not know how to write. I barely knew how to take photos. The first few I have some blog posts that are like 3 sentences. Right? And then like 3 photos. Yeah. And it's a blog post.
Yeah, I think this will be like analogous to that. This particular podcast.
Maybe. But I know a lot more, because back then like we were just, I knew zero, very little. Like I would blog personally. Like I had a music blog before.
Oh, yeah?
I would share musicians or songs that I found on the internet. And I'd put there like, oh, this is cool, and then share it. Kind of like a Tumblr-ish, but it was on Multiply.
It was like your sharing in Facebook before Facebook, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. But purely music, that was my niche, quote unquote. Right? And then like just stuff that I liked to listen to and that I discovered. And so you could say that I was already interested in blogging, but I never like wrote down like long sentences. There was no structure to it, right? So the first few blogs were very much like that.
Yeah, so the experience taught you how to write, no?
The blogging?
The blogging, no?
Oh yeah, for sure, because we were actually very in the beginning what's the word? We were very ambitious.
Oh yeah.
I think
I'm not sure, but I think we committed to 3 or 4 blog posts a week.
All right.
And that is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, you were what you call this? You were you didn't know what you call this? How hard it is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So most of and then I initially pushed back on the writing. Like I didn't want to write all that much. So my strategy was reaching out to so many people and then just just to write. So if you look at the WordPress of 032, then there's like an author. You can put like different users. So every time we had a new author, we put in a new user. I'm not sure, but I think we have like 100 users there.
Wow.
Of like, just because I would just ask anybody who showed the hint, the smallest interest to write, if they wanted to contribute to the site.
Yeah. So I suppose this will also teach you how to interview and to, as Tim Ferriss said, he was doing this partly to fix some verbal tics and something like that, no? Which is also actually one reason why I wanted to start a podcast like a couple of years ago with Third World Startup to
so you can
practice,
listen.
I will speaking.
I don't feel like I want to improve speaking. Like I'm in it because like I really just want to connect to other people. I think that's my main motivation because like I mentioned, you grow up, you have 2 kids, and it's very easy to just
disconnect with the
just lock yourself in your house and then just go on to your day to day, and then and then I found that I like having one-on-one conversations with people. Like I don't do well in like big parties where sometimes you have one person telling 5 people a story and then this person's like really good at it and then everybody's laughing and then I am not good at that. I like having like one person to talk to and then digging deep if that person allows me to dig deep. Some people just don't. They're like, hey, I just do this and then they're done. And they have no interest in talking to me and then that's fine. So I think I'm in it for the connection with other people. Which it's a good reason to podcast, I feel.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'll show you like the steps I've taken. I even downloaded. I will play it for you. I downloaded music for the podcast. Yeah, I don't know if it'll play, but I'm gonna try to play it. If the audio conks out, we'll just go back. But and then I start talking, and then it starts to fade out.
All right.
Right.
So welcome to the 032
Conversations.
Don't Cry podcast.
Yeah, but like,
where do you get this music?
There. So I searched on Google free podcast music.
Right.
But like, I'll share the link on the show notes. I have apparently YouTube has a thing. Has a page there where you can just download free music for videos.
Nice.
Yeah, so you can also do the same thing for the podcasts. It's on YouTube. So there's like I don't know. There were a lot of there's a lot of music. There's a lot of other sites that give you music, but like I found another site. I forget the name right now. Bensounds, I think, or something. Like he lets you use the music for free, but specifically not for podcasts. Unfortunately, he won't give you the license. He'll give you a license to like use it in a video or something. And I found a couple that I really liked, but I wasn't allowed to use it on a podcast. So this YouTube one, which I will link in the show notes, is where I got it. Right? Let me see if I can find the youtube.com audio library /music.
Check it out. Do you know anyone else doing this in Cebu? I'm just curious, like, who else there's like creating like podcasts?
Well, we mentioned Issa Please, right? So her podcast was called IssaTalks. Although I think she stopped doing it, which I have my theories, because she stopped doing it a few months last month. She'll probably start doing it again, because the way she did it was she would do it live, and then it would get shared as a podcast.
Yep.
Right? So she would do it like every 10 p.m. or something on a Sunday. Which if you're committing to 10 p.m. on a Sunday every Sunday. So and then to her credit, she did a lot. She did a lot of like podcasts like in a row, which I feel like is not gonna work for me, because I don't think I can sustain committing to doing something to an exact time on an exact date. Like I can commit to like releasing a podcast every Tuesday, right? But I'm not gonna record the podcast every Tuesday. I'm gonna record a whole bunch.
There's a way actually to record something and post it to say Facebook Live.
Oh, yeah, no, but the way she was doing it was like, she was saying, she was saying hi to the people who were commenting. And then she would, there was a lot of interaction involved. And I thought she was actually pretty good at it.
Yeah.
And then the way she was doing it too was in the beginning it was like a one-person podcast, which is no, she wasn't talking to anybody.
Oh, okay.
It was her, and then there would be a topic, and then she would just keep talking, which is really hard to do.
Yeah.
And eventually she got guests, but in the beginning, that's what she was doing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then...
anyone else here?
I did some research, so I listened to these guys before. They're called channel14.com, right? Pretty interesting. Got a little nerdy for me, because I'm like, they're into comics, and I just couldn't understand what they were talking about at some point. And then they're into like another podcast. So channel14.com has a whole bunch of other podcasts. And then that they produce.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so it's like bodega nights. They're just hanging out. Linux, and then I'm not on the title itself. Like I'm not into Linux. And then there's another one where they're talking about
Cebu
wrestling.
Or Philippines? Or where's that?
Cebu.
Oh, yeah?
These guys are from Cebu. Yeah. So if you're into those topics, I will also include that in the show notes. All right.
Maybe you interview these guys as well.
Oh, eventually, hopefully, yeah, definitely, and then
no, because they could give you tips on like setting up the podcast itself. I mean, they're clearly techies, so probably thought about this more than I did.
Oh yeah, well maybe, but actually, in terms of the equipment, it's not all that complicated. Like I looked at another, so. You search Tim Ferriss and his podcast gear, and he has he's listed his gear on several websites, and it's fairly simple. It's just a regular microphone and a Zoom mixer, right? And then he just has two. So if I opt to do this more often, I'm just gonna purchase a Zoom mixer on Lazada or something, and
Is it available in Lazada?
Yeah, man, Lazada's the best. There's so much stuff there. Yeah. Like, let's say you lose something, like on your, whatever, like on your gear or whatever, like this mic stand, you can buy it in Lazada.
I just recently, I lost the USB of a friend. So I just bought from Lazada and had it delivered to him.
Yeah.
That's it.
It has so much stuff. Like, I buy my coffee stuff from there, like coffee filters. If my AeroPress breaks down...
They should pay you for this, man.
Yeah, Lazada, we're open for sponsorships. Affiliate programs. I was kidding. But, and then, so it's fairly simple. Like, I already have a whole bunch of mics.
From your music days.
Yeah, but just I just didn't have a mixer that could record two microphones at the same time. So right now, what we're using, the ATR2500 USB. This is the bare bones setup that we're going for right now. And then there are other podcasts like the Big Picture.ph. The Big Picture is The thing is, it says podcast, but he didn't. I don't think he's on iTunes or anything. He just posted on his website. This guy, his name's Dave Visaya. And then Dave Visaya. We met. We interviewed him. Yeah. So he has I've listened to a few episodes.
What does he talk about?
So he's interviewed entrepreneurs primarily.
Okay.
So he interviewed like a friend of mine from A-Frame Surf Company, and another guy. I'm blanking on his name right now, but they own like a barber shop in Talisay, like those like cool barber shops.
Yeah. My brother went all the way there to get a haircut.
Oh yeah, what's it called?
I don't know what it's called, but I know there's a barber shop there.
Yeah. He went all the way there.
Yeah.
I met the owner, cool guy, and then he was also interviewed in.
Hey, what's the thing with like I don't get this haircut thing. What's behind that?
I don't know. It's like it looks cool. Like I have my haircut in like those cool barbershops.
I get it in Landers, which is free for members.
Oh yeah, I know. You can, but I don't know. Like people like to look good. But but I guess it's a barbershop where you can order alcohol, coffee.
Yeah, like in Manila, there's like super expensive barbershops that people go to. So it's like
well, we'll ask them about that also. I'll have them over in the podcast. But so Dave Visay, interesting. I actually the problem with all of these podcasts locally, in my opinion, is that they're just not consistent enough. Like IssaTalks was the closest in terms of consistency, and I think she did a really good job in that sense. It's just that she committed to a live podcast every Sunday. Yeah. And she did that for a while. Right? But like the others, like, they I think that the big secret to even like the blogging is just be consistent. Just commit to a schedule and just do it. Yeah.
Did you check out the Manila podcast as well? I mean, did you research on that?
No, to be honest, like I didn't do that deep of research for like local podcasts. Like what's his name? Like there are some podcasts but they're basically radio shows.
Yeah, they just post it.
Yeah, and then they post it as a podcast. Like
Mo Twister.
Yeah, like the Mo Twister one.
Is he still around? This guy?
I don't know, man. I don't like. I remember watching. He had a podcast with. He would interview guests, and very Mo Twister style, where he'd interview like guests, celebrities, and he interviewed Ellen Adarna, and then she basically got drunk in his podcast. So it was entertaining.
Yeah,
and Mo Twister is like really entertaining.
Yeah, he's a pro. He's a pro radio guy.
Yeah. So, but radio is so different from podcasting. Radio is more like it just has a different feel.
Yeah, it's like it's a what you call this? It has its own traditions. It's a genre which has its own limits and its own rules. So people know what to expect, and the pros know how to deliver that.
Yeah.
But podcasting is like it's so new that you pretty much do whatever you want.
I think so. And then also like with radio, like for some reason people expect like like there's games, like call-ins, and games, a lot of games. I don't get it. There's so many games, like and then like I'm just not interested in that personally. Like even listening to it, like I don't feel very interested in it. So I like having the interview portion, and then also because radio's so worried that you're gonna flip to a different channel.
Yeah,
that they try to keep it like snappy. It has to be quick. It has to be. They don't allow for like a lull in conversation. And then with interviews, at least the long form interviews that I listen to, in fact, many times those are the more interesting ones.
Yeah. Actually, after this, I'm gonna search for like little podcasts because I'm really interested in like what people are doing.
Oh yeah, send me a link. Yeah. Because in Cebu there are not many, and then the consistency is the one that's lacking in a sense. Consistency, like the publishing consistently.
I have a question. Will it be all in English? I was wondering, like...
I've thought about that. Yeah,
like,
go.
If there's a guest was more comfortable in speaking in Cebuano or something. And I was like, how come? Because like podcasting is such a what you call this? Essentially there are no rules.
Yeah.
So there's been something I've been thinking about, like, you know, when I do that other podcast, how like what situation will I use Cebuano? Where, for instance, if it's gonna be a culture podcast, I'm sure I'll be interviewing somebody about the Cebuano language. It's gonna be kind of weird, or maybe it's more appropriate if you use the language yourself.
Well,
talking about it.
I've thought about this. My answer to that is, I'm gonna talk like how I talk, and then the other person is gonna talk like how that other person talks. So if the interviewee basically is much more comfortable in Bisaya, then I will probably also speak to them in Bisaya. But my Bisaya is not great. My Bisaya is very like, there's a lot of English in between. So
yeah, which is like no, I'm wondering, because right now we're speaking in like our, I guess this is like our official business vocabulary, like our voices, no?
Okay.
And
well,
like,
I do mix. If you notice, I mixed a little bit of Bisaya here and there.
Yeah, but it's like much less than, for instance, if we were just discussing something over coffee or beer, no?
Yeah, well, which I think is something that I should probably improve, in a sense that I kind of want to just be able to talk how I talk.
Yeah, because like like American podcasters don't have this problem.
Oh, of course.
They just
speak English.
They speak English.
So they speak.
And like when we're talking outside of this context, you know, it's much more of a mix of different languages.
Which I think I want the podcast to show that. I want the podcast to have, just to show how people talk. So if you know, just to give you an example, I'm sure like if I talk to somebody like Insoy Ninal, he is very proud of the Bisaya language. Yeah. And then good for him. Mm-hmm. He has every right to be. And if he wants to, and I would hope to one day talk to him. He's a very interesting person. But if he were to come in here and he wants to speak pure Bisaya, great.
Yep.
We will do it. You know? Yeah. I just want him to, in fact, one of the things that I got from the Tim Ferriss, one of his rules is that the guest has last say. They have final cut.
Yeah.
So, because unlike journalism or video, in a lot of cases, the talent or the person being interviewed, they don't really get to, if they said it, that's what they said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so part of Tim Ferriss's rules is that this is not a gotcha show. That's his term, where I'm not trying to make you say something
you don't mean to say, or you regret later.
Yes. And then, so
or you could regret it, and then.
But yeah, we can regret it. Yeah. You can make a joke about, you know, your wife or whatever, and then if you feel like you'll just cut it out, then we'll cut it out. No big deal.
Yeah.
So in a sense, the interviewee has as much control as he or she wants.
I'm wondering how you could set up that atmosphere where you're just talking, like it's as if you're not recording. Because I've been thinking about
that's my challenge. Yeah.
Because actually, it's precisely the person. I was thinking maybe interview this guy as well, Insoy.
Oh yeah.
And then, of course, you know, it's like I want to hear his voice as a, you know, Cebuano musician and somebody who's been also writing about the Cebuano language.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's I'm wondering how it can be done. Yeah, because like I think
you just get him. You just contact.
I think it's like people we've been trained to in certain situations to speak in this in English essentially. Essentially our whole lives. Like when you go to school, you know, you speak like this. Yeah. No? So I don't know if I could turn it off. At least for me, you know.
How with Insoy?
No, but
how with in general?
In general, and like I'm sure people have the same trouble as well. But we don't. It's like maybe the best way is like okay, let's start talking without the mic on, and then and suddenly it's like And then how do you have that conversation like what you overhear in bars in Cebu? It's like it's something I'd love to hear.
Maybe you just bring a recorder to a bar and then yeah. No, but like, well, I know at least for me, the way I talk changes with the person who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
So if the person I'm talking to is clearly more comfortable in Bisaya, then I will Notice myself changing and speaking a lot more Bisaya than English. So in that sense, I don't know. I'm just thinking it'll come out, right?
Yeah.
But I think, but what you're saying is that in a setting where people are being recorded, they tend to be different. Now that's really the struggle of everyone trying to do this sort of thing, trying to get an authentic sound, good tape, essentially.
Yeah. Maybe liquor would help.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not above it. I'll do it. But yeah, I think that's one of the challenges, at least for me, to try to get to. And then one of the hacks around that is just to make the podcast long, because the longer we sit here,
and then comfortable.
Yeah,
Forget the mic.
Yeah, you forget that it's there.
Yeah.
No. In fact, I'm sure the dynamics will change. So right now we have one mic. We're sharing one mic, so we're not even facing each other. We're both facing the mic.
Yeah.
To just have optimal sound. But eventually, if I plan to keep going forward, I want to get 2 mics. And then it seems like handheld would be best because
they can control the distance, or what's that?
Well,
because
now if you're holding it, you're more likely to get closer to the mic.
Okay.
And then if it's just hanging there, people sit back. And then all of a sudden they're far away. And then but if they're closer, at least it's in a sound engineering point of view, it's a much more consistent sound.
Where do you plan to do the recording?
Oh, I have an office that I can record there, but like I don't know. It'll depend on who I'm recording, because maybe that person has an office, maybe that person has some place they'd be more comfortable.
Yeah.
I can also just tell them, hey, if you want, you can go to my office in Kasuntingan. Yeah. There are options, you know. So, yeah, there are options. Like here, maybe I'll knock on your door one day and I'm like, hey, bye, I need a room to record a podcast. No, but like, you know, there are options. And then and then once you have the 2 mic setup, there actually your options become much bigger, because you could do it outside, because it just won't pick up that much room anymore.
Okay.
Depending on the mic.
That's gonna be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. So I mean I have a couple, I mean we already mentioned Insoy. I have a couple of people that I would like to interview. Right. In fact, I wrote them all down here, but I don't know if like I want to say it out loud and just basically announce to the world who they are. But as you can see, these are all people.
I'd love to hear from these people, man.
Yeah, for the podcast listener, we're looking at a bunch of names that I wrote down on Evernote, which I'm reluctant to read out loud. But generally, these are people who are doing something locally. A lot of musicians, brand owners, even coffee roasters, photographers, graphic designers, a director or two, you know. Fortunately, these are all people I'm friends with, so they shouldn't be too difficult to... I should... Yeah. No? They shouldn't be too difficult to ask.
What's your pitch?
My pitch? Oh, I don't know. My pitch.
No, because there should be like something in it for them. Like, what would they get?
I don't know. Initially, I was just thinking like, hey, you want to be in my podcast? I think, well, you know, a lot of people like the... Well, here, okay, yeah. All right. This is my pitch. This is my pitch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not going to say this out loud, but like, I mean, to them when I'm asking them, like, I'm just going to ask them if they want to be in my podcast. But a lot of people, especially these people who I feel like they are doing something tangible, they are really, in their own ways, trying to make a dent in the world. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of the struggle is just to get other people to know about it. Mm. And they don't get many opportunities, especially in a setting where they get to sit down and talk about what they are doing for 2 hours, an hour. I don't think they're gonna get that from many places. Like you get an interview in a newspaper, and then I mean, trust me, I've tried this. I've talked to like somebody who'll not be named, and then I just talk to them about what I was trying to do. This was years and years and years, way before Zerothreetwo. And then what we were trying to do, and then I had this really long conversation with them in a coffee shop, right? And then I remember reading what came out, and then I had quotes of things that I supposedly said. And these are words that I've never used in my life. So the bar is very low, right? The bar is very, very low. So if you want, and then at least with the podcast, there's no way for them to be misconstrued. What's the word? Misconstrued, to be misinterpreted.
Yeah. Well, they could be, but at least it's their exact words.
Yeah.
Which they could still edit if they wish to.
But what I'm saying is like, they get to talk about whatever it is they want to talk about for like an hour, for 2 hours. Yeah. Heck, for 3 hours if it's going well.
Actually, once you've gone past the first 6, you could just show, this is what we do. No?
Oh yeah, for sure. It'll be much easier. And then, if people actually listen, then it's a much easier pitch because like, then I can be like, hey, if you want to help promote something, are you, your store, your shop, or are you releasing something? Especially these directors, when they release like movies, they do a lot of press.
That's right.
And then a lot of times it's the press asking them, so what was it like to work with so and so? And then the questions are, they're the same questions over and over and over again. So it would be nice to have like, at least I'm gonna try to have a different kind of conversation with people. Yeah.
That's gonna be a very interesting. That's a very interesting list.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think so too. Well, yeah. Okay, to be honest, I have nothing else.
We should end here.
Yeah. So.
Do you have like a ending ritual? I find it because like the long form podcast, I feel it just suddenly ends. Unlike Tim Ferriss, like okay, it's ending because
he goes like I want to be. I'll be like, I want to be cognizant of your time, right? But like, he has like a little ritual where he even has these like rapid fire questions.
Rapid fire questions. Okay, so it's about to end.
I don't know. I haven't
thought about that, but it's like something. At least for the listener, I think I feel better. No, I don't know why, but it's like.
Yeah, like, we're here.
Yeah, it's like it's ending in a few minutes.
Well, one of the things that that I do want to do and include is, is there anything that you want to say
to our listeners,
to the listeners, or is there anything that you want to pitch? In fact, I should have asked you that before we even pressed record, right? But if there's anything you want them to read, anything that you want them to do. Or where can the Tim Ferriss one is like, so where can my audience find you?
Yeah.
So where can they find you, Kahlil?
Now I just search for my name, my blog at corazo.org and other places.
It's called corazo.org.
Yeah, but also just search for my name. That's basically it.
Kahlil Corazo.
Yeah.
But corazo.org.
Yeah, I would have.
So you'll be pressured to update it,
Yeah.
claim it. Claim the site.
That's right. Yeah, I've been working on writing as well. Following our conversation and your tips on it. So that's been my recent struggle. So that's why I'm really looking forward to listening how people create their stuff.
Well, definitely we will have a follow-up podcast for sure. I would like to talk to you about your writing.
Now, I would love to ask you about your writing and how your process.
Oh yeah, we can do that too.
I've been struggling on this for quite a while to actually do this. But you've been doing it, so it's gonna be interesting to ask you in this format where I can ask you anything about writing.
No, you can do that. I mean, I don't think I'm like a great writer or anything, but I do. It is part of my routine. All right. So I think we can end there. So I
think you have to have a script so that you have like an ending script. So thank you to the audience and blah blah blah.
Well, the way that Marc Maron does it is that he has the interview. He'll even go, "Yeah, so I think that was good. Are you good?" And then the guy will be like, "Yeah, that was good. Thanks very much. All right." And then you can hear them literally shaking hands. It feels like that. And then he has like a cut. And then he comes in again.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, what was that about?" Be like, "Yeah, so that was so and so, and hey, Blue Apron," or talk about a sponsor.
Are you thinking about it as well, sponsors?
Oh, the sponsor. Well,
at some point,
maybe. I feel like we'll see. I mean, I actually think it would be very easy to get a sponsor, but very easy in the sense that it won't be a monetary sponsorship. I could very easily ask somebody to I don't know, give free coffee beans or something to be mentioned in the podcast. But I'm not really thinking about it right now. It's a possibility. There's definitely room for it. But if you listen to Tim Ferriss, he thinks you don't focus on sponsorships first.
Build your audience.
Yeah, build the audience. See what's there. Yeah. So you can get sponsors that can grow with you. So you're not making sacrifices. In fact, that's we can talk about that quick before we end. When we started 032, we initially thought we'd make money via sponsorships. So we did a lot of things that were not necessarily the best way to grow the audience. We would do a lot of contests, and we'd partner with an establishment. They would pay us some money, and then we would put up a contest. A lot of people would love to listen to your stories of growing 032. So I guess we have something to look forward to in a future episode. Yeah. No, but in short, it's we weren't doing it in the long term. It was not helping us. We would get follows or likes or whatever, but these were not people who necessarily wanted to follow us. So at the same time, in short, we don't want to start sacrificing the podcast just to get a specific sponsor. Right? So maybe they'll want me to do something that I'm not necessarily comfortable with. Yeah. So I think that's a good place to end the first episode of, I guess we can call it 032 Conversations.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, Kahlil, thank you very much for indulging me today.
All right.
Hopefully next time you hear me, this podcast will be out.
All right. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. I hope you enjoyed that conversation between myself and Kahlil Corazo. Make sure to subscribe to 032 Conversations on iTunes. The intro and outro music is called Piano March by Audionautics. Thanks everybody for listening. I'll see you again next week. Cheers. There's that rooster again.